Oi, seja bem-vindo! Eu sou Celina e esse é o Insight, uma plataforma online que vai compartilhar sabedoria com você para a construção da sua carreira, da sua trajetória de sucesso. Olha quem veio falar com a gente aqui hoje. Fundadora do Positivamente, Margarita Tarragona é psicóloga especializada em processos de transformação pessoal e relacional. Tem doutorado em psicologia pela University of Chicago. Durante o doutorado foi aluna do Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, que junto com Martin Seligman estava realizando pesquisas que tiveram como resultado o que hoje conhecemos como a Psicologia Positiva. Em 2014 lançou seu primeiro livro, Tu Melhor Tu. Além de professora associada do Wholebeing Institute, está na mesa diretiva do International Positive Psychology Association. Margarita é da cidade do México e esteve no CONGREGARH 2017 falando sobre um futuro construído a partir de nossas forças. Margarita, que prazer!
A pleasure for me too. Thank you.
Yeah, we're speaking in English, Portuguese, Portuñol.
All right, to reflect
our cultures and our connection to the U.S.
Right,
so it's going to be something really informal, but we're going to have a very good time here.
I'm sure too.
Because you are here in Brazil, and you are a hero because you came from Mexico yesterday, and yesterday you were on stage delivering a beautiful, beautiful talk.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. The power of adrenaline, right?
Yes.
I was so excited that I didn't feel tired at all.
Yeah.
But then last night I just clumped.
I know, and that's great because today we have time here to talk a little bit more about what you did on stage. And CONGREGARH 2017, it is very happy and honored to have you here. So I want you to, briefly talk a little bit of what was the message yesterday for the audience of almost 1,000 people, right?
Right. Well, I'm very grateful, and it's a beautiful and impressive conference. And I guess my message had to do with one of the many ways in which positive psychology can contribute to a better future, because the theme of the conference is a future with values and that's worth itself. And I think one of the loveliest parts of positive psychology is the study of human strengths, of character strengths. So yesterday, basically, the message in my talk was the importance of noticing people's strengths, of knowing our own strengths, and very especially if you're a manager or if you work in an organization, to be sensitive and know the strengths of the people that work with you, because that's one of the keys to happiness at work. To happiness in life in general and to happiness at work. And we know that happiness at work is very important because we spend so much time at work. It's really a very important part of our lives. And also it's good for organizations because people who are happier, as I showed in some of the graphs, they go to work more often, they miss less days, they are more concentrated in what they do, they plan to stay. So there are many advantages which I think are important, but I think the most important advantage is how can we lead a fuller, more flourishing life, individually, as organizations, and as a world. And also, what other presenters shared with us was very inspiring, how they're, worrisome in a way because the technologies or the skills that we have may change, are changing definitely, but also because we're seeing the beginning of more of possibly more collaborative ways of working across distance. So that was very inspiring to hear.
So tell me a little bit about your career. How did you build your trajectory and where you are now, and where did you come from?
Okay, so you know how they say that we live life forward, but we make sense of it in retrospect. So now I feel the integration of two important strands of my life, but I didn't predict they would be like this. I feel I always had like a vocation to help people. You know, when I was a little girl, I used to really admire Florence Nightingale, Albert Schweitzer. For a while I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but I wanted to do something to help people. So I chose psychology, and I knew I wanted to be a therapist. But I was also very fortunate to be able to study at the University of Chicago for my doctorate. That program was not to train as a therapist, it was more a research program. It was fantastic, it was the Committee on Human Development. And I just had the sheer good fortune of having Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi as my professor.
Wow.
So he at the time was studying happiness, flow experiences, creativity, and I felt like, you know, I couldn't believe how fabulous it was to see that psychology was also studying those things that make people happy, that help us lead full lives. I was also very lucky there to have as a professor David Orlinsky, who was one of the founders of psychotherapy research, about the systematic study of how therapy works and if it works. So I was incredibly lucky, and I'm very grateful for that. At the time, there was not a movement called positive psychology, but there were people who are now considered among the fathers of positive psychology. You know how many people say that Martin Seligman and Mike Csikszentmihalyi are the fathers of positive psychology. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I chose the path to work more as a therapist. I trained in family therapy, and I continued to be interested in what is now called positive psychology, but at the time it was more than anything a corpus of research. Mm-hmm. I remember many years ago when I was Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's student, I said, Mike, we have to apply this thing about flow in therapy. And he said, Margarita, we can't rush into applying things. There still needs to be a lot of research done. So that happened. A lot of years went by faster than I thought. And positive psychology evolved into, in addition to a body of research about well-being, a lot of practices and ways to apply positive psychology. So I've been very involved and very lucky in the past about 15 years or so to integrate the positive psychology and therapeutic practices, and also coaching. I've expanded beyond therapy to other ways of other contexts. So what I am really very passionate about and I love is how can I bring in the findings about well-being and happiness in ways of working with people that are collaborative and inspired by practices like narrative work, like dialogical work. So how to be in conversation with people in ways that take advantage or use the knowledge that comes from positive psychology.
Yes, that's great. And you participated on, when was, sorry to ask, but when were you at Chicago University?
I started in 1984 and finished in 1989, so it's over 30 years. So I really was there at the time it was like naciente. No?
Yes, because I know that positive psychology had, you know, it's not something that started now. It's been done for so many people, like Maslow before 1998. When was the date that Martin Seligman?
It's 1998 is usually considered like the birth of
positive psychology. But you participated on this, you know, this backstage, can I say, when the show
as a student, of course.
But this is so rich. So how can you really now make this happen? Because when you started telling us here about research and what you've heard about flow and Mikali, his name is very different.
You want to know a trick he used to tell us in English? Chick, send me high. Chick, send me high.
Chick, send me high. Oh, I love that. Chick, send me high. Okay, so Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. This, you know, you interacting with him, and he's known for flow. That is something that we really appreciate his work, and we used daily on our practices, right? Now we can use that, but you were there. That's so, that's thrilling, that's so exciting. So what can you tell from that time there and now, that what is the best way to apply everything that you saw give birth? Can I say that? You saw, yeah.
I don't think there's one way. You know, for example, in the world of therapy, Martin Seligman says that positive psychology can be grafted into any therapeutic approach. But I do like to think about this, and actually I'm writing a book about how we can use positive psychology in the helping professions. And I think there's 4 ways. This is my take. Of course, everybody has different ideas.
But
and let me give you a little bit of a background of how I came up with this way of organizing it. Mm-hmm. James Pawelski from the University of Pennsylvania. Do you know James?
Yes, I know.
I was thinking of him because he studies the humanities and positive psychology, and I thought, with your love of music, you definitely have to know his work.
Yes, yes, I know his work. He's great.
Yeah. So anyway, James, even though he's an American, he grew up in Mexico, near Monterrey, in a very small village. Mm-hmm. And he was kind enough to write the introduction to a book that I co-edited about positive psychology. And in that introduction, he says that he remembers when he was growing up, he noticed that the peasants in Santiago, creo que se llamaba, or some, I don't remember the name of the town, that in order to have a good harvest, peasants first had to weed, to pull out all the weeds and the wild nopales, wild cacti, before being able to start to, have a harvest. But later he thought that in order to have a good harvest, you cannot just pull weeds, you need good seeds. And psychology traditionally had concentrated more on pulling weeds than on actually planting good seeds. And I thought that was a beautiful metaphor, because we had been, in the world of therapy, for example, so trained to get rid of what's an obstacle or get rid of what's wrong, but we really didn't know much about what to add to make things really flourish. So I really love that metaphor, and I started to think, okay, so if we don't just pull weeds, what other things do we do? And I had this image, okay, so one thing we do if we think about, agriculture or about the world of plants, is that we can observe and be like good botanists. I imagine like if somebody goes to the Amazon and they don't want to change anything or to do anything, but to really learn about what's beautiful and good that's already growing there. So one thing we can do as helping professionals is to be good observers through the lens of positive psychology and be aware and sensitive to what's already blooming and flowering there, to people's strengths, values, passions, joys, relationships. So I think the most basic way in which we can adopt positive psychology is as a perspective, as a way to look at things. James says that Mike Csikszentmihalyi sometimes has said that positive psychology is a metaphysical orientation towards what's good. I once asked Mike, and he said he wasn't sure he said it, but he did not oppose that idea. But anyway, so it's an orientation that does not just look at what's good and ignore what's problematic or painful, but that encompasses both. Mm-hmm. So that's the first level. We can be good botanists and look at what's already grown. And if we need to find out about it, ask the locals, ask the clients. So we can ask, inquire. I see you have a book about appreciative inquiry. Ask questions about all of those things. What do you love to do? What are you passionate about? What brings you joy? What are your talents? So I think that's one big part of what we can do, without using any special techniques, but more a way of inquiring. Mm-hmm. Then I thought, well, what else can we do? We can also fertilize the ground. What do we use as fertilizer? That's not a very, that may have some connotations that are not so nice.
No, to boost
what can we add?
And
I think what we can add is all that knowledge and research about well-being that we can bring into our therapeutic conversations when appropriate. Mm-hmm. So for example, last week I was in a coaching session with a woman who had to retire because of a medical condition, and she was telling me about that she spends most of her time alone with one of her caretakers, And she said that when she used to work, she would interact with tens of people every day, with customers and providers every day. And even though she didn't know them very well, she was in touch with people all the time. And I was remembering some research by Barbara Fredrickson about, for example, weak ties, and how those short daily interactions with people who are not really our friends or our family, who are weak ties, predict well-being even better sometimes than our strongest relationships. So I mentioned it, but do you know there's research about it? We know that those short interactions are very important. So we can go into more or less depth, but I see it as resources that I can bring to the table, and we can engage in conversation about it. It may be relevant for the person or not, but it happens a lot of the time.
So research as a fertilizer.
As a fertilizer
yeah,
of the conversation.
Yes.
You know?
Observer, like a botanic, it would be considered the first step, and then research, this is the second
to
one.
bring into the conversation.
That's
not as a prescription, but as, what do you think about this? Would it apply in your life? Do you want to try it out? The third way is what I think most people think of when they think of applying positive psychology, which is actually suggesting an intervention, a special exercise, a special activity that has been empirically proven to improve well-being. So there I thought of Martin Seligman's idea of grafting. I don't know if this is his intention, but I know that he's a horticulturist, that he loves to grow roses. So I think that his idea of grafting may come from his experience growing roses, where you can graft a red rose with a yellow one and maybe get a peach-colored one or something. So I think when you graft, you usually have an outcome in mind. You want a watermelon with smaller seeds, or you want a rose that has a brighter color. So in that sense, I think when you use interventions, you have an idea, an outcome in mind. You're based on the assumption from the evidence that it will help the person be happier, feel more grateful, feel more connected. So there, what we do is actually suggest to people, some might say prescribe, I don't like the word prescription, but why don't you keep a gratitude journal for 2 weeks and see? What if you write a thank you letter to your professor who had such an impact in your life? How about doing random acts of kindness for a week in your organization? So there's, by now, over 200 interventions or exercises that have been proven to improve well-being in different ways, and we can suggest those to our clients.
Bringing action, right?
Exactly. Though I think action can also come from conversation, but then this is like a very more directive way of suggesting things. And then the fourth one I called accompanied self-help, because there's so many really good books written for the general public by wonderful researchers. You have one here by Martin Seligman, there's books by Barbara Fredrickson, by Sonia Lyubomirsky, by Mike Csikszentmihalyi, by Todd Kashdan. There's so many books written by serious researchers, not just for their peers in academic journals, but for the general public. That I think that's a wonderful resource that can either reinforce the work we do in coaching, in counseling, in therapy, extend it. Sometimes people cannot come very frequently, or maybe after the process is over with us. So it's like that additional connection with the world of positive psychology that I think can further expand and improve their experience. Wow, I've been talking non-stop. I'm so sorry.
I love that. But if you could put like in words like these four,
right.
Could you call it phases or
they're not really
approaches?
Phases. They're like pieces or ways you can do it. This fourth one I would call like good horticultural books. That's not a very good one, but like how to grow a garden or how to...
Okay, so the first one would be observation.
The one would be like to observe what's good and already growing and blooming. The second one would be enrich conversations, whether as a coach or a therapist or a counselor. Add into the conversation as grits for the meal. Research results. The third would be actually suggest that the person does something that we know usually helps people
like an
be better,
exercise,
and a positive intervention. And the fifth would be to continue to learn through the generosity of people who have written about it. a colleague once, when I was trying to present, this, and I said, well, these are like good horticultural books, and I felt, oh, I'm stretching the metaphor too much. She said, no, you know what they're like? They're like bouquets that you're offering, because these researchers put a lot of work and a lot of years into developing this knowledge, and in their books, they're like flowers they're offering to people who can take them. And I thought, oh wow, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, and there's some instruments also that are free, as
right,
we
absolutely.
heard yesterday
right.
from Claudio Hutz.
Absolutely.
That is a researcher in Brazil, and he has
fantastic.
like 24 books.
Right.
And with instruments for us to use in organizations,
right.
and with coaching practices and therapy,
absolutely.
and it's available for them.
And now that you mention it,
so generous.
Right, and not just books. Now that we can also use apps. There's so many good science-based apps to improve well-being.
Do you suggest some?
Well, I love Happify. I work with them.
Oh, you do?
I do. I've been lucky to develop a track and to collaborate with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think Happify is fabulous, and they have really good researchers like Acacia Parks measuring the impact of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
There's also things like trackers that maybe were not specifically. I go like this because I have a chronometer here.
Yeah.
They are not intended for happiness, but we know that physical well-being improves happiness, so you can decide to take 10,000 steps a day.
Of course.
There's also apps for gratitude. There's one that's like a little like a tree, and every time you write something you're grateful for, a little leaf sprouts out of the branch.
So cute.
There's so many. They really are growing very fast. So there's so many good TED Talks, videos. I mean, the resources that we have based on positive psychology are incredible.
Yeah, this abundance of wisdom.
And you're producing it yourself here.
I'm so honored that
I am too.
You are my second guest.
Wow.
And it's opening night or opening day of my project inside. And I'm so thrilled about sharing wisdom, and this is what we do, right? I think that we have to use what we believe in our lives. Mm-hmm. So I believe in this possibility of sharing, of abundance of information, abundance of wisdom, of experiences. That's why I have this safe place here for us to chat and to be ourselves.
Right.
And I'm very honored,
so
I have you here.
So am I.
From Mexico to Brazil, Margarita Tarragona. I can speak with.
No, this is perfecto.
Isn't it?
Sí.
Yeah.
Is there a rolled R in Portuguese or not? Like eres? No. Oh.
It's like it's kind of Spanish. No, Margarita.
Sí.
No, I would say I'm a carioca from Rio. I would say Margarita.
Margarita. Oh, it sounds so much sweeter.
It's cute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love Margarita.
Oh, I have to tell you a story. I recently went somewhere in Mexico, and I don't know if they do that here, but in many office buildings they require your ID in order to get in. So the person there in security sees my IDs and he says, Margarita, oh, that's an old-fashioned name. He said, nobody has it anymore. And I thought, oh my God, I hope it comes back in style. But I guess he was right. I think of it as a classic name. But anyway.
I love the name, and I love flowers.
It is a flower, right?
It is a flower. I love flowers. So what I was talking about is that we have to practice and apply what we study in our own lives. So you said about hard work, passion. These are some of the ingredients for us to succeed and to have a meaningful life. It's not just about just talent. Talents are great, but we need more than our talents, right?
Absolutely.
And do you know a little bit, do you believe that you said hard work, and are you familiar with Angela Duckworth?
Absolutely, a great.
Yes.
And my very good friend Caroline Miller just published a beautiful book called Getting Grit. She's a very good coach, and it's about how to develop grit in your life.
Book.
Oh, really?
I'm going to Amazon.
And you would love. And you can interview her. You would love her.
Oh, I would love to.
It is. Though I have to say, I don't always practice what I preach. I often say, and not completely kidding, that my business card should say, you know, Margarita Tarragona, positive psychology, asterisk, and underneath, a merely theoretical approach, because there's so much of it I don't apply, but at least it's aspirational. You know?
Yeah, but you know, it's kind of like language. What I think, it's just sometimes we know things, but we don't apply yet.
Right.
But like when I learn a different word in English, first I don't know the word. No, I don't know the meaning, and then I get to know the meaning of the word, but it's still not on my toolkit or on my vocabulary that I could use it, you know, easily. And then the next step would be I will be using it in my vocabulary. So I think the tools or the exercises or interventions, we know that gratitude is great, right? But when I don't have time to do my journal, I would just, you know, mentalize in my head and being grateful for everything that we have so many reasons to be grateful for. So I think that we study a lot, we get so much information, but I'm sure you practice, and you are you know, how can I say, living proof?
I think so.
Yeah, of someone that really it is aligned you know, with what you practice, what you preach, right? So you're really aligned.
Well,
You because I've been, you know, sharing some time with you, and I can tell that you are an adorable person to be with, and your energy. So were you like this always, or did you improve? Yeah, you know why? Because I think I'm better now. I'm happier now, like Tal Ben Shahar says. Are you happier than like 5 or 10 years ago? Are you?
I think I've had a very blessed life, so I think I've always been a very happy person. Actually, the other day, through the wonders of technology, a friend through WhatsApp was moving, a friend that I grew up with, and she was, you know, packing everything in her house, and she found a little book, a booklet in which some of us had written her when she was going to go to the US to study high school or something, or she was going into the 8th grade, I think. And she found this little booklet, so she took pictures of what some of us had written and sent them to us through WhatsApp. And I had written her like, well, I hope you have a very nice time there, and I ended with "be happy!" exclamation point. And I thought, oh, so that was a little seed of my future self. Of course, it's not a very original thing to say once I think about it, but you made me think of two things, and let me know if we're going on too long.
No, go ahead, please.
On the one hand, you talked about words, and you know, in Spanish, there's no exact word for grit. Is there in Portuguese?
You know, I was researching that, and I think it's garra.
Really, there is.
Do you have garra?
No. What is it? Also,
garra. I have to look up on the dictionary, but it's kind of grit. That you have perseverance, and you have guts.
okay,
like
bravery. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is it?
I think it's more like that, because in Spanish we say like it's perseverance and passion. Or
and passion.
But
yes.
but
It's
not
a
just one word.
combination.
I see.
Garra, I think it's the best way to translate grit to Portuguese.
Okay. And do you think it's something that's very valued in Brazilian culture?
Not really. I mean, it is, but people value talent a lot.
Okay.
It's kind of like, I think that grit is something that we should...
It's one of those American things, maybe.
Yeah.
Because you made me think, I hadn't thought about it. In Mexico, I think we value hard work very much, but we wouldn't describe it as grit. So interesting differences.
Yeah.
And the other thing you mentioned about applying positive psychology in one's life, I think that a lot of it has to do with what you and I have learned from Tal Ben Shahar about habits, the importance of habits. So one thing is to have an idea that I want to do something, and the other is to really make it into a habit. And that's what I find very hard for myself, you know, like so many people at the beginning of the year, I said, this year I'm really going to exercise 5 days a week. Don't ask me how I'm doing in terms of that, but I keep trying.
Yeah, it's always something that we're going to be missing because our lives are so dynamic. But the good thing is that he talks he talks also about rituals, right?
Right, I love those.
So this helps a lot. I think that rituals, but I'm you know, myself, I'm not a routine person.
Oh, okay.
So I work here in Brazil, I work in New York, I have 3 offices. I have one office in Barra, in Rio de Janeiro, another in Leblon. I work in the city. I work all around.
Wow, so you were ahead of your times in terms of being like...
Yeah, I'm mobile.
Wow, that's fabulous. That's fabulous.
I love that
Congratulations.
because it's, you know, it's my personality that I have to respect. I'm at my best when I have different
environments
and people. So that's why I love traveling. Would you like to send a message, because I know that people that will benefit a lot from our project here are people that are studying human development and this area of positive psychology that is fascinating. Do you have any kind of message that you would like to send to people who are starting to learn about positive psychology, to be practitioners, not as professionals, but as practitioners, to bring to their lives, personal and professional, or even as professionals? Do you have a message that you could send to those people?
Oh, well, you reminded me of something that I think one of the roles I've been fortunate to play is to difundir, how do you say, like to spread positive psychology in my country. And for me the message is one of both enthusiasm and care. Or I think it's positive psychology has so much to offer. It's so beautiful that psychology now studies human flourishing, that it's like this, you know, treasure chest. And at the same time I would like to encourage professionals also with the same message that Mihai Csikszentmihalyi told me many years ago: be careful, don't rush into things. I think there's a risk of oversimplifying it or taking a course and then not being updated about where the field is developing. So I think it's very important to be enthusiastic and use the tools of positive psychology, and at the same time continue to study, read the research, so we can continue to develop it in a good way.
Yeah, I agree with you totally, because even in Brazil, we are so enthusiastic about things that we kind of rush. The great thing about positive psychology is that there's foundation.
Exactly, don't lose the foundation.
There's research, and we have really to be, you know, to have the benefit of having so many people study. I'm not a researcher, but I'm so grateful for you guys, researchers.
I'm not a researcher either, very little. I'm mostly a practitioner.
Yeah, but you know, you have this experience with researchers, and you started there, right? At Chicago University?
Right.
Yeah, so I'm really glad and so grateful for the work of the researchers, and we have to use it. And we have to take positive psychology seriously, because it is very, very profound and based on studies, and we can use it. I love that, because when I started in this area, human development, there was no research on that.
It was mostly based on experience, and people's experience, which is also another source. I mean, we're going on an aside here, but I often say I don't think psychology is the only or the most important source of knowledge about happiness. Of course, we have ancient spiritual traditions, philosophy I think is the most important contributor, cultures, different, popular culture, and our own personal experience. So I think those are all like fountains we can drink from, and now psychology offers another fountain that's based on research. But we have to know which is which, so they all enrich our lives.
Oh, thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you, it's been fun.
Yeah.
You're talking about flow, I've been in flow. We've been
too.
speaking for an hour.
Yeah, me too. And you saw the other interview,
I loved
my first one for the Inside Project. And you saw that we sang this song,
Okay.
and I'm going to do this with all my guests.
That's such a beautiful idea.
Yeah, next time I will have my guitar, but today here in Porto Alegre, Brasil, for the CONGREGARH 2017, I would love for you to share the first song that comes to your mind right now.
Wow. You know, it's interesting how context influences, because I don't think this song would have come to mind in Mexico. But now that I'm here and I'm far away, I thought, México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti, que digan que estoy dormido y que me traigan aquí. But you don't know that one.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have to
What about
learn
another
this
one?
one.
De la sierra morena, cielito lindo, vienen bajando. But we have to find one that you know
well,
too.
we have to sing together.
Okay, you suggest one.
Guantanamera is not Mexican.
See, no, it's Cuban.
Guantanamera. Oh, it's Cuban. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, but it's great. Or one in English, a popular song
one?
of today. That to you.
Imagine all the people living life in peace. We are international. Cuba, Mexico, Brazil, United States. Thank you so much.
It's been fun.
And you sing so well.
Oh, I don't have an
you're very
educated
No,
voice.
you are great.
One day we should do a workshop together about narrative, stories, and songs.
And songs.
That would be fun.
Okay. Love to have you here.
Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.